Everyone ready? Okay, so another test that you need to have a general knowledge of is the 16 PF, or 16 personality factors. Okay, now the 16 PF is another non-pathologizing personality assessment. Alright, it's very similar in that way to the CPI, and it's based on Cattell's model of personality. So it has 16 components. Alright, I've listed them all here for you. I don't think that you need to know them for the exam, for the comprehensive exam. And if you want to know them in more detail, you can actually Google 16 PF and Wikipedia, and you'll get the chart, okay, with these factors and what a low score and a high score measures on each one. If you want to go that in depth, I do not think you need to go that in depth. But just so they're here, Cattell's model of personality has 16 posits: warmth, reasoning, emotional stability, dominance, liveliness, rule consciousness, social boldness, sensitivity, vigilance, abstractedness, privateness, apprehension, openness to change, self-reliance, perfectionism, and tension. Okay? So what does the 16 PF look like? It's 185 multiple choice items which are written at a 5th grade reading level. Okay? Again, significantly lower reading level than the more clinical measures on the MCMI and the MMPI, right? Okay? There's norms for people aged 16 plus years. Now, the important thing about the 16 PF is that the item content typically sounds non-threatening, and it asks simple questions about daily behavior, interests, and opinions. So, it pulls for actual behavior by asking questions about daily concrete situations rather than asking the participant or the person taking the test to make a self-assessment of their own personality style and traits. Okay? That's something that this test has that's very unique. So, actual behavioral situations kind of look like this. 2 examples from the test. I didn't compromise test security. That would be very unethical of me. I actually found these on the internet, so someone had already done it first. Which makes it okay. When I find myself in a boring situation, I usually tune out and daydream about other things. True, false. When a bit of tact and convincing is needed to get people moving, I'm usually the one who does it. True, false. Okay? A lot more concrete and absolute. A lot more tangible in terms of item content versus other personality measures, right? That's all I measured. That's all I knew about the 16 PF. Okay? So what are the important things to note about the 16 PF? It's normed for 16 plus years. It has a lower reading level requirement. Okay? It's based more on observed behaviors than it is on assessing internal personality traits. Alright? It has 16 measures based on Cattell's model of personality, and then 5 secondary measures based on the Big 5 model of personality. Okay? And that's all I knew about it for the comprehensive exam. Okay? So this might seem a bit repetitive for everyone, but then we have the Beck inventories, right? You also need to know about these for the comps. Everyone has administered a Beck inventory, right? So we know what they look like, okay? So the Beck Youth Inventory for ages 7 and above. The Beck Depression Inventory. Know the age range, okay? Really important. So 13 plus years. If you're so inclined, it's not hard to remember the different levels of depressive symptomatology. The Beck Anxiety Inventory, the BAI, okay? 21 items. And then the Beck Hopelessness Scale, the BHS, for people aged 17 to 80 years old. Do you want me to go into more detail than that, or just they're the 4 that you need to know and know them? Yeah? No? Okay. Another important one for you all to like just have an awareness of, all right, is the CDI, the Child Depression Inventory. Okay, it's for children aged 7 to 17 years. It's really quick to administer. From memory, I think it only has 15 items. All right. It arrives at these 5 measures: negative mood, ineffectiveness, negative self-esteem, anhedonia, and interpersonal problems. Okay, really straightforward. And then the SCL 90. Okay, 13 plus years is the age at which you can administer this. It has 3 global indices. It's also a really important factor is that it has non-patient, outpatient, and inpatient norms that you can compare against, okay? That is really, really an important component about this test. And from memory, that was a question on our assessment comps about the norming of this test, okay? Primary symptom dimensions that it looks at: somaticization, obsessive compulsive tendencies, interpersonal and, oh, I've said interpersonal sensitivity twice. Sorry guys. Depression, anxiety, hostility, phobic anxiety, paranoid ideation, and psychoticism. So there's 9 symptom indices that are pulled from the SCL 90. All right. Has everyone administered the SCL 90? All right. It's very commonly used. So it takes maybe, I don't know, what would you say, Mitch? Like maybe 20 minutes for the person to complete. It's a self-report measure. If you feel like you need to know these tests more in depth, I highly encourage you to just go and check out the test in the library and have a look at it. You don't need to administer it to yourself, but just to have a look at the kinds of items that load onto it, okay? Now, the last one is the Achenbach Child Behavior Checklist, or the CBCL. Has everyone administered the CBCL? If you work at the PSC, you've probably administered 75 of them, okay? So there's 2 versions. There's the school version for children aged 6 to 18 years that has 140 items. And then there's the preschool version for children aged 18 months to 5 years with 100 items. Okay? You've got the teacher, the parent, and the self-report. 3 versions. Alright? The syndromes that are pulled for look at aggression, hyperactivity, bullying, conduct problems, defiance, violence, internalizing, externalizing, thought problems, attention problems, and social problems. Alright? The CBCL is an important one to know. It says have a general awareness of it, but because it's one that is used so frequently in assessment, I really recommend you guys, if you haven't looked at it or administered it, to go and check the test out. Okay? So, any questions so far? Alright? This is kind of just stuff that you need to know. Like the key features of each one. But it seems pretty transparent, right? Okay. Now, this might seem like a bit of a non sequitur, but when you look at the format of the comprehensive exams, you know how there's each section? A component of the objective personality assessment section is the assessment of ADHD. Okay, so I thought I would cover that for you guys in here as well. Alright? Does anyone know what you need to have a diagnosis of ADHD?
Repeat the question.
Does anyone know the necessary components for a diagnosis of ADHD?
Well, if I remember correctly, the behavioral symptoms need to occur in 2 different situations, both at school, for example, and at home.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously the inattentiveness, but I don't know degree.
Well, let's look at it.
Okay.
Let's go further while I eat my Twizzler. Okay? Like you said, behavior. You're going to use an objective measure, like the CBCL or the Conners rating scale. Is everyone familiar with the Conners? Conners is a test that has become synonymous with ADHD assessment, okay? It also has a parent, a teacher, and a self-report measure. I don't think that the Conners is included on the list of tests that you need to know for the comprehensive exam. But it's a behavioural checklist that pulls specifically, it looks at like the DSM criteria for oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder, and ADHD, and what kind of manifestation of ADHD it is, whether it's inattentive, hyperactive, or combined type. Okay? So maybe double check and see if you need to know about the Conners, and if not, like, we can come back and cover that as well. But I don't think that you do. So like you were saying, right, you want at least 2 situations to draw behaviors. So you want it from the teacher at school, from the parent at home, okay? You're going to assess for the presence of symptoms, the type, severity, number of symptoms, situations where symptoms occur, verbal and non-verbal abilities, cognitive abilities, co-occurring disorders, social functioning, and academic functioning, okay? The kinds of methods that you're going to use. Clinical interview, child, parent, and teacher. We're going to look at their medical health. Developmental history is really important. One of the criteria for looking at manifestations of ADHD is that symptoms have to be present in childhood. So when you're doing like a retrospective diagnosis, say of an adolescent, they need to have been presenting with these behavioral difficulties since I think it's before age 6 or 7. Okay? Behavioral observations, rating scales, and psychological tests. So what about cognitive deficits that we're going to look for? Okay, specifically we're going to look for poor planning skills, memory impairment, and a lower verbal IQ. On the WISC, you're going to look at letter number sequencing, digit span, okay? The working memory and processing speed indexes too, and look for any kind of patterns that can manifest, okay? Oh. Next. Okay. Then you're going to look at any social and adaptive functioning deficits that may be there. You're going to look at poor self-care skills, inflexibility, tantrums, and difficulty coping with directions. You're also going to look at motivational and emotional deficits. Alright? If they have a limited interest in achievement, they're emotionally reactive, or they have a limited sense of persistence. Alright? And you're going to look at motor, physical, and health deficits. So are they accident or injury prone? Do they have poor fine and gross motor functioning, general health problems, or sleep problems? And then finally, deficits in self-regulation underlie such difficulties, okay? So be familiar with the 3 different subtypes of ADHD, okay? Hyperactive type, inattentive type, and combined hyperactive inattentive type. But the key components, okay, the take-home message is that you need these behaviors to manifest in at least 2 environments. Usually for a kid, that's home and school, because that's usually the extent of their experience. All right? You're going to look for cognitive deficit trends in the WISC. Okay? You're going to look at self-reports, teacher reports, and parent reports from a behavioral rating scale, such as the Conners or the CBCL, or both. And then you're going to look primarily at behavioral observations in terms of fine and gross motor skills, general inattentiveness that's observed, all right? And you're also going to look at their developmental history to look at the manifestation and how long these behaviors have been occurring. So they're the key components of ADHD assessment. If you look in your Groff Marnett book, he actually has a section where he looks at assessing ADHD, and that's a really important aspect of the comps because it's its own little bullet point. Okay? How do you assess ADHD? So I really encourage you guys to kind of like know this part quite well. Okay? Now, I've covered what I think is the objective personality test that you need to know. So I'm wondering, is there anything that you want me to go over more in depth? Are there any questions related to the material I presented or perhaps didn't present? How's it?